What is going on, ladies and gentlemen, hunters and non-hunters? I am Ethan Holmes from Wet and Wild Outdoors, tuning in from southeast Wisconsin. Real quick, just gonna discuss what I do for late season. After the gun season here in Wisconsin, things really slow down in the deer woods. Any bucks that are rutting or on hot does or in the lockdown right now makes hunting really difficult for a lot of hunters, especially with the pressure of the gun season. It's the day where, or it's the stretch of the year where most of the hunters are in the deer woods, putting off scent, putting off noise, and putting off a lot of pressure on these whitetails. So what I like to do is, it is literally the day after the gun season, and so what I like to do is just go in to the public land, scout around, look at bedding areas and look at food sources, and just play the wind a little bit. Don't push my wind into any areas that I'm thinking about hunting, and just see what's out there. So the number one thing that I can tell you guys is drive around your public land areas, or for me, I'm hunting public land. If you're in an area where you have stretches of private land, drive around your private land areas or bordering properties and find where these deer are feeding. It could be corn, it could be beans, it could be leftover acorns from the fall, it could be some other foliage that's in the deer woods. But if you find tracks and you find deer poop in the woods, it's a good place to mark on your onX maps or keep in your mind, and think about hunting those areas in the evening, especially. In the morning, bedding areas is what I recommend. I've had a lot of success in the morning hunting bedding areas that are nearby to food sources that these deer relate to. Although in the afternoon, I jump right on the food sources. That way, when I'm going into food sources, I'm not pushing deer that are out in the fields or in the acorn woods, I guess you could say, and putting pressure on deer that are already feeding. Yeah, so find the food, find the bedding areas. Late season hunting is dreadful with the weather, don't get me wrong, especially here in Wisconsin and the upper Midwest. Things can be very difficult with this weather. The winds, the snow, things just get really tough. But if you're willing to put in that extra work, deer hunting actually gets a lot easier. Deer become way more patternable than they did in the rut time, and even in the early season when you're fighting off mosquitoes in the heat. If you can bundle up and figure out where these deer are bedding and feeding, things become very easy for you. Deer routinely do the same thing in the wintertime because food sources become very sparse, bedding areas become way more, I guess you could say, related to. Things get very patternable. They do the same thing, repetition over and over and over. Whether it's a big thicket in a marsh or just a lot of horizontal cover in the deer woods, if you're hunting with a lot of ridges and terrain features, horizontal cover is a good place to look. A lot of thickets, south-facing slopes in the wintertime is huge. Some of you shed hunters know that. South-facing slopes are going to be the slopes that get the most heat coming from the sun. Find the sign, hunt the deer. That's pretty much as simple as it gets in the wintertime. Yes, wind is always a factor in the deer woods. Let's not bounce around that at all. Those does were bedded in a field right here. Along this line in front is the private public boundaries. So I might make my way down here, see if there's any fresh deer tracks going into that area. And the hunters are actually hunting the center of this public piece most of the time. Not all of the time, but most of the time. So a lot of the pressure is actually in the middle of it all. I'm just gonna see what I can find for deer sign. We just saw 2 deer, so we know that they're out here locally. In fact, I know where they're probably bedding is on the backside, which is damn close to the public land. Those deer that go from the public land thicket to the private land are going to be difficult to hunt. Just reason being for this situation, they have their bedding area picked out and then they have their food source picked out. So it's basically a straight line for them to leave the public onto the private. I'm gonna go check out an acorn area that I know is up here. We had a heavy acorn drop here in the Midwest, or at least in the state of Wisconsin we did. So I'm gonna see if there's not a lot of acorns still on the ground, or at least deer scratching at the ground for those acorns. But it is cold, guys, really cold. When I woke up, it was 17 degrees, so we'll see. It's gonna be miserable, but that's hunting. And you know what? Our ancestors did it, so why can't we? Life is easier now. Go get them and kill one, would you?